Story 1. Back in 2013, I was on the road nearly every week. I worked as a regional supplier for automotive equipment, and most of my job involved long drives, late check-ins, and even later invoices. I didn't mind it much. I liked the quiet. I liked the open road. But there's one motel I stayed in that still makes my skin crawl to this day. It wasn't haunted in the way people think about ghosts or apparitions. It was something quieter, something underneath. I was heading west, toward Phoenix, when a dust storm slowed me down about 80 miles outside the city. It was already dark by the time I reached a town called Sycamore Gap, just a blip on the map. A gas station, a diner, a stretch of road that looked like it hadn't been repaved in 2 decades. I passed a faded billboard that read, "Rest easy, Red Valley Motor Lodge, vacancy always." I took the exit. The motel sat on a cracked patch of desert, surrounded by nothing but dry brush and sagging telephone poles. There were maybe a dozen rooms, all facing the parking lot, and a blinking neon sign that barely lit the front office. Inside, the place smelled like old coffee and bleach. The man behind the desk looked up slowly as I entered, as if I'd interrupted something. "You just passing through?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "One night. Got caught in the storm." He stared at me a little too long before reaching for a key hanging on the wall. He handed it to me but didn't let go right away. "You're in room 3. If you hear anything tonight, just ignore it. Storm kicks up weird noises out here." I blinked. "Okay." He let go. I drove my truck around to the far end. Room 3 was at the edge of the building. One window. Rusted air conditioner. The door creaked when I opened it, but the room was clean enough. Stained carpet. Faded floral bedspread. A television is bolted to the dresser. The usual. I took a quick shower, lay on the bed, and flipped through local channels. There were only 3. One was static. The second was a cooking show on low volume. The third was a local access program showing desert wildlife at night. Coyotes, scorpions, an owl in slow motion. That's when I heard the first sound. It came from below. Not beside me. Not outside. From under the room. At first, I thought it was plumbing. Maybe a pipe rattling or some pressure in the walls. But it didn't sound mechanical. It sounded deliberate. Slow. Like someone dragging something across tile. I muted the television and held my breath. There it was again. A scrape. A thud. Then 3 distinct knocks. Soft. Spaced apart. Directly below where the bed sat. I sat up. Looked around. There was no basement. No lower level. My room sat flat on a concrete slab. Same as the parking lot. I got up. Crossed the floor. And stomped twice. Nothing. Then I leaned down and placed my ear to the carpet. There was breathing. I swear to God. Deep. Slow. And close. Like someone lying on their back under the floor. I jumped back. I nearly fell trying to stand. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I checked the vent, the wall, baseboards, and every corner of the room. Nothing. No trapdoor. No loose paneling. Just a flat, solid floor that shouldn't have anything beneath it. I went back to the front office. The man was still there. Same seat. Same posture. Like he hadn't moved. "Is there a basement?" I asked. He looked up. "Number." "Then what's under room 3? He didn't answer. I pressed. "There's something down there, I heard it." He sighed. "Sometimes the wind makes the pipes echo." I narrowed my eyes. It wasn't pipes. He glanced out the window. "I can move you to another room." That should have been my first clue. He didn't even pretend to ask what I heard. Didn't bother to check. He just offered to move me. I almost said yes. But something in me, curiosity, pride, stupidity, made me stay. "No," I said. "It's fine. Just tired." He nodded once, slowly. "Then keep the door locked, and don't go outside if you hear footsteps." That night, I didn't sleep. I turned off the lights, pulled the chair in front of the door, and placed a screwdriver under my pillow. I set my phone to record audio and left it on the nightstand. I wanted proof, or maybe I just wanted to know I wasn't losing my mind. I lay there for hours. The wind howled. Branches scraped the window. Then the scratching came back. Louder this time. Closer. Right beneath me. I stared at the ceiling, holding my breath. Then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. "My name," whispered, from the floor. I didn't sleep at all that night. Not after I heard my name whispered through the floor. I stayed frozen, staring into the darkness, phone still recording, heart racing so hard I thought it would shake the bed frame. The sound didn't come again. No more scratching. No more dragging. Just silence thick enough to drown in. The sun came up slowly, painting the cracked blinds with pale orange light. I waited another hour before I moved. My legs were stiff. My mouth is dry. I got dressed, grabbed my phone, and headed for the truck. But I didn't leave the motel. I couldn't. Something was wrong, and I had to understand what I'd heard. I opened my phone and went straight to the voice recorder. 4 hours and 12 minutes of audio. Most of it was static. Wind. The hum of the air conditioner. But around 2:41 a.m. something changed. A faint bump. A slow scrape. And then, my name. Clear as day. Not whispered like I remembered. Spoken. Calm. Cold. Like someone saying it to test the way it sounded. I played it back 3 times. It was unmistakable. I drove around to the back of the motel. I figured if there was something under the building, there had to be a way in. Most of the backside was dirt and trash. Old tires, a broken refrigerator, weeds grown tall from neglect. But behind the far edge, where the pavement dipped slightly, I found a hatch. It was old, rusted, bolted shut with a heavy chain looped around the handles. But the padlock had already been cut. Someone had been here. He hesitated. My body told me to get in the truck and leave, but something stronger pushed me forward. I unwrapped the chain, gripped the metal handle, and pulled. The door groaned open, revealing a steep staircase that vanished into darkness. A smell hit me first. Dust, rust, something deeper, old, and wet, like rot that had been covered up for years. I pulled out my phone flashlight and stepped down. The stairs creaked under my weight. The air got colder with every step. I counted 15 before my foot hit the concrete. The hallway stretched ahead, narrow, lined with brick on both sides. There were no lights, just my beam cutting through the dark. I walked slowly, the beam shaking as I moved. Every few feet, there was a door. Thick, metal, no handles on the inside. The first room was empty, just a cot and a bucket. Scratches covered the walls. The second was worse. Chains are bolted to the floor. A single shoe in the corner. No windows. No vents. I wanted to leave. I should have. But then I saw the monitor. At the end of the hall, behind a small desk, an old computer screen blinked, static. Then, movement. A room. Familiar. It was my room. Room 3. I stared, unable to breathe. The feed was live. I could see the unmade bed, the chair still against the door, the television flickering softly. The camera was angled from below, just beneath the floor vent. I stepped back. Then the screen changed. The hallway, where I was standing, but I wasn't on it. Whoever was filming, they were behind me. I spun around, light shaking, heart pounding. The hallway was empty, but the screen behind me flickered again. A third feed. Now it showed the front office. The man, still sitting at the desk, still staring ahead. Except now, he was smiling. I ran. I don't remember getting back to the surface. Don't remember throwing the hatch shut or driving off with gravel flying under my tires. I drove straight through the morning, didn't stop until I hit Phoenix. I called the police when I got there, gave them everything. They found the hatch, the rooms, the monitors. But by the time they arrived, the place was abandoned. The front office emptied out. No sign of the man. No records of who owned the motel. No footage on the computers. Just dust. And scratches. One of the officers told me later, off the record, that what disturbed him most wasn't the rooms or the chains. It was a small note they found under the desk. A handwritten page, crumpled and torn. It said, "Don't move them too fast. They're easier to watch when they think no one's there." I still don't know what I walked into. A trafficking site? An underground experiment? A trap that almost closed on me? I never stayed in a roadside motel again. And I never drive through Sycamore Gap. Not even with the doors locked. Because what was underneath that room? It wasn't empty. Story 2. It was waiting. When I first moved to Chicago, I was broke. I mean, really broke. Student loans, part-time job, no car, no connections. So when I found a studio apartment listed for $700 a month in a neighborhood that wasn't a crime scene, I jumped on it. It was tiny, just one room and a bathroom, but it had hardwood floors, a working heater, and a view of a courtyard filled with dead vines and rotting benches. I called it charming. I had to. It was all I could afford. The building was old, brick, 3 stories tall, probably built in the 1930s. The hallways smelled like burnt coffee and mothballs, and the elevator didn't work half the time. My unit was on the 3rd floor, and the landlord told me during the walkthrough that the previous tenant left abruptly. I didn't ask what that meant. I just nodded, signed, and moved in the next day. For the first week, it was fine. Quiet. The walls were thick enough that I barely heard my neighbors. The only thing that bugged me was this weird square patch on the wall beside my bed. It was maybe 3 feet wide and 3 feet tall, halfway up the exposed brick wall. It had been covered with plaster and painted over, but the outline was obvious. The texture was different. The corners bulged just slightly. The second night, it looked different. It wasn't smooth anymore. There were small cracks in the plaster, running like spider veins across the surface. I got out of bed, walked closer, and touched it. It was warm. Not the way brick gets warm from the sun or heat. This was localized. The rest of the wall was cool, but that one square radiated faint warmth, like something just behind it was alive. The next morning, I went downstairs and asked the woman in 2B if she knew anything about the apartment's history. She was in her 60s, wore curlers in her hair, and watched daytime soap operas on full blast. She stared at me a little too long before answering. "That unit's always been strange," she said. I asked what she meant. She shrugged. "I've been here 18 years. That square wasn't always there." "You mean the plaster part?" "Number, I mean the window. It used to be a window." I froze. "There's nothing on the other side, just an alley." She nodded. "Still, was a window back then. Then one day they bricked it up. No explanation. Just overnight." I asked if she knew who lived there before me. She said a man named Ryan. "How long?" 3 months, maybe less." "What happened to him?" She shrugged. "One day I saw him in the hallway. The next day, his key was slid under the office door. That was it." I thanked her, went back upstairs, and stared at the wall. A window. It felt like a window. Covered, sealed, erased, but still there, underneath. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. That night, I stayed up. Saturday, on my bed facing the wall, every light off, phone in my lap. I hit record and just listened. At exactly 2:12 a.m., the tapping started again. But this time, it wasn't random. It followed a pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Longer pause. Then 1, followed by 5 fast ones. I copied it down. It repeated. Over and over. The next day, I looked it up. Morse code. It spelled WATCHING. I dropped my phone. I didn't know what to do. Move out? I couldn't afford to. Tell the landlord? What would I even say? "Hey, there's a ghost sending Morse code through the wall?" Instead, I taped a piece of paper over the square. I know how stupid that sounds, but I couldn't keep looking at it. I couldn't sleep knowing it was bare and exposed. It didn't help, because that night, the tapping didn't stop. It got louder, faster, and it didn't sound like fingers anymore. It sounded like nails. I ripped the paper down the next morning. The square on the wall was worse. The cracks were spreading, no longer thin lines but jagged breaks. The plaster had shifted outward slightly, like something was pushing from behind. The warm spot was even hotter now, almost feverish to the touch. I pressed my palm flat against it. It pulsed, like a heartbeat. I didn't go to work that day. I stayed home, pacing. I searched the building's history online. City records, zoning permits, anything. There was nothing specific, just general information. The building was erected in 1932, originally served as a hotel, then converted to apartments in the late 80s. No lawsuits, no reported crimes. But one archived permit caught my eye. In 1994, the landlord applied for permission to seal a non-code window on the 3rd floor. My unit. Reason: compromised structural integrity due to recurring tenant complaints. Recurring complaints? What kind of complaints? I took a hammer and started gently tapping along the plaster. Most of it echoed dull and solid, but the center had a hollow sound. I chipped at it. The surface flaked off easily, almost like it had already been weakened. Beneath the plaster was a wooden panel, painted gray, nailed into the brick with old iron spikes. I stood back, staring at it. It was real. It had been a window. I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. That night, I waited until after midnight. I turned off the lights, set up my phone on a tripod, hit record. Then I sat in the dark. It was almost quiet. Almost. Around 2 a.m., the tapping began again. But now it had a rhythm. It wasn't just noise. It was a message. Repeating. A new word. O-P-E-N. I stood up slowly, heart hammering. I walked toward the panel, reaching out with both hands. I shouldn't have. I know that now. But my body moved without asking. I touched the center. The tapping stopped instantly. The wood was warm again, even hotter than before. Then, from behind the panel came a voice. Not loud, not clear, just a whisper. I see you. I stumbled back, and the wood creaked. It bowed outward. I ran. Down the stairs, past the 2nd floor, out the front door into the cold street. I stood barefoot on the sidewalk, panting, staring up at my dark window. Nothing moved, nothing peeked out, but I felt it. I felt something on the other side. I called the police. They came about 20 minutes later. 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female. I explained everything, showed them the recordings, the wall, the Morse code, the chipped plaster. The guy rolled his eyes, but the woman seemed genuinely unsettled. They said they'd take a look. They went into my apartment while I waited in the hall. After 5 minutes, she came back out. "There's a panel, yeah," she said, "but nothing else. No sign of forced entry. No movement." I asked if she had checked behind it. She shook her head. "It's nailed shut. You need permission from the landlord to break it." I couldn't sleep again. That morning, I called the property manager. Told her I needed someone to check the wall. She sounded tired, like she'd heard it before. She asked if I was the new girl in 3C. I said yes. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Someone will be by tomorrow." I waited. The maintenance guy came around noon the next day. Name tag said Luis. Big guy. Barely spoke. I walked him through it. He stared at the wall for a while, then said, "You sure you want to see what's behind this?" I nodded. He got to work. It took nearly an hour to pry off the panel. Nails screeched, wood splintered, and dust clouded the air. And when it finally came loose, we both froze. Behind the wood wasn't brick. It was a narrow, black space. A void. We aimed flashlights inside. The gap was maybe 3 feet deep. And beyond it, another wall. But this wall had a window. Not a fake one, a real one. Glass intact, dirty, stained. And on the other side of it, a face. Pressed against the glass, eyes wide open, not moving. Luis dropped his light. I backed away. The face didn't flinch. I just watched. We called the cops again. This time they listened. They tore through the wall and accessed the crawl space from the utility shaft. What they found made headlines for one day. That's it. One article. Quickly buried. There was a hidden space between the two units, just wide enough for someone to crawl through. Inside they found a blanket, a flashlight, food wrappers, and a journal. The final entry was dated 3 days before I moved in. It said, "She's back. I think she sees me." They never found the person. I moved out that same week, broke the lease, never went back, but I still think about it. That face, those eyes, the message on the wall, WATCHING. Because sometimes at night, even in my new place, I hear it again. 3 taps, then 2, then 1.